Welcome to the session 7 of the second Eastern Africa Bioeconomy Conference, which has been happening in the last couple of days. We have heard a lot about how to build a sustainable and resilient African bioeconomy. And one thing that has come out very clearly is that we should do this in the African context, using the resources that we have locally, but also leveraging from the tools that we can develop and also access globally. And therefore, innovation is about sustainable bioeconomy. And of course, we should put all this in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 and ultimately the African Union Agenda of 2063. But for now, we will concentrate on the SDGs 2030 because we are considering the period 2021 to 2030 as the decade for accelerating our efforts towards achieving the SDGs. So my name is Julius Echuru, and I'm the manager of Bioinnovate Africa, where we translate innovative ideas into practical solutions, including business and the market. We shall be looking to the future, linking bioeconomy and the SDGs 2030. And here, after listening to everything that has happened in the last 2 days, we asked the question, so what next? And I have with me here a wonderful panel to discuss this way forward and looking to the future. So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce my panel. And please, when I introduce them, give them a round of applause. And if you're joining us online, you can stamp your feet wherever you are. So we have with me Mr. Fortunate, and I would like to start with that word, fortunate. His name is Fortunate, to give us fortune. Mr. Fortunate Muyambi, who is the Acting Executive Secretary of the East African Science and Technology Commission, based in Kigali, Rwanda. Welcome, Fortunate.
Thank you.
And then we have Dr. Catherine Siyomo, who is the Director of the Becker Ill Rehab, based in Nairobi, Kenya. Catherine. And we have Professor Måns Nilsson, who is the Executive Director of the Stockholm Environment Institute, and also a Professor of Practice at the Royal Technical Institute, based in Stockholm, Sweden. Måns is also a member of the Bioinnovate Africa Program Advisory Committee. Welcome, Måns.
Thank you.
And we do have a wonderful colleague and partner, Dr. Anne-Catherine Bogdansky. She's the technical officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and at the joint FAO International Atomic Energy Agency Center, which is based in Vienna, Austria. And Anne also coordinates the International Working Group on Sustainable Bioeconomy. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you. Hello.
Okay, let's give us a round of applause. And of course, we have with us this evening the honor and privilege, Dr. Kevit Desai, who is the Principal Secretary, State Department for East African Community in the Ministry of East African Community Affairs and Regional Development of the Republic of Kenya. So welcome. Dr. Desai will be giving us a closing statement at the end of this session. But before we go on, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to the highlights of what has been happening in the last couple of days.
We are delighted you joined us today
at this second edition of the Eastern Africa Bioeconomy Conference.
And as you probably know by now, the theme that we are working with is building a sustainable and resilient African economy.
ICIPE through Bioinnovate will continue supporting efforts aimed at building sustainable African bioeconomy, enabling scientists to translate biologically based solutions and inventions into practice.
We need to promote, communicate bioeconomy as one of the key factors to make life better, and also to answer to challenges of environment.
There is a challenge out in the society as well. It's a challenge in the economy to really take up, to channel these scientific discoveries, the innovations, the entrepreneurship into the market, and thereby also create the jobs that we are talking about.
Connecting these smallholders to market, value chain, and agro-processing opportunities is increasingly seen as one of the most important tools in elevating agricultural productivity and improving rural livelihoods. Supporting initiatives that effectively link public research organizations, universities, and market actors will improve the chances of East African farmers, agribusinesses, and agro-processors benefiting from the rapidly advancing field of bioscience.
Which sector would you say is the most important sector for bioeconomy development or transformation, and why would you say that?
It's very difficult to pick out just one, in the sense that there are a variety of sectors which have different motivators, different drivers, and different outcomes and impacts. And here in South Africa, we are exploiting indigenous knowledge. We are harnessing it for the benefit of the people.
Africa has a lot of biodiversity. We need a regional approach, and the regional approach should fit into the national approach.
At ICIPE, where I serve as head of technology transfer unit, we have several models that could actually serve as examples. For instance, the use of insect as food and feed, the development of biopesticide, the use of natural resources such as pathogenic fungi to develop biopesticides.
As the nation in the region, they are fully based on agriculture. That will give us an opportunity to extract maximum out of the biomass and bioproduct we have in the region.
Bioeconomy research is an opportunity for us to generate transformative change under biotechnology, bioecology, and bioresources.
Africa has the chance to say, what do we need? What have we got? You've got so many environments. You can actually look at so many different ways to join things up differently.
So we need to put some frameworks and be able to share what we have for the benefit of the African continent and be able even to export.
The bioeconomy makes Africans look inward. Bioeconomy makes the researchers want to discover what we have always had indigenously, culturally. The bioeconomy wants to make us be proud of what we have.
We are talking about bioeconomy right here, right now in our generation. That's a huge opportunity.
So we need to structure out how we can be able to sustainably use the technology that is at our disposal efficiently and using it well with holding the responsibility of whatever you are creating. You have to hold the responsibility that it goes back to you.
I feel like most East African countries have a vision to be food secure by maybe 2030, some 2040, but how are we going to get there?
Indeed, unlocking the value of indigenous crops, coupled with the changing consumer demands, presents opportunities for Africa to sustainably capitalize on Africa's biodiversity.
You have innovated
and your product is ready for commercialization. But how do you find patent registration for your innovation products?
We have trainings for businesses so that they can know the issues like patents, and we are now saying, let's partner. Mr. Muyambi, let's partner, involve us, the East Africa Youth Network. I know you're doing a great job with the youth, but let us work unison.
There's also a need for more financing to be in place in a better enabling environment to support a lot of young people in playing their part within the development of this bioeconomy that we are working towards.
We look forward to strengthening our cooperation in the months and the years ahead, particularly in the biologically based technology, which is a promising investment area for job creation, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and subsequent outcomes in Africa. This sounds finally as a golden opportunity offered to young entrepreneurs to create our own bio-based solutions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of you who have made contributions in one way or another in this conference so far. So to my panel here, from what you have heard and what you have seen, and also from where you stand, how would you describe the state of sustainable bioeconomy in Eastern Africa 10 years from now? Maybe let me start with Fortunate.
Thank you, Julius. The state of bioeconomy in 10 years is promising. And actually, if you look at the East African integration in terms of the partner states involvement, we are looking at the use of bioresources for development. We would like to see in 10 years petrol stations selling biofuels. We would like to see bioenzymes replacing chemical enzymes. We would like to see a state of where all the waste from the landfill, from the municipal, being used to come up with a bioproduct. And all in all, we are looking at the bioeconomy to have a center of excellence in the ESC to champion the bioeconomy development in a sustainable manner in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal of 2023.
Yeah, thank you. I think I like that center of excellence and could be maybe the driving force to all these ambitious programs that you mentioned. Catherine, from your standpoint, what do you think? Has Fortunate given us a very ambitious or realistic expectation?
No, I actually agree with Fortunate. It's quite promising, and I'm optimistic about what the future holds. What this conference has taught us is that if we work together holistically, integrating all approaches and all stakeholders' opinions, ideas, we can actually achieve more. And with the example yesterday about South Africa already implementing their bioeconomy strategy, that gives hope to other countries as well. Whilst we cannot copy and paste, as was said yesterday, but at least to see another country on the continent implementing it, it gives hope. And today, to also see young people championing and leading the conversion of science or bioscience into actual products, into actual companies and products, it is also optimistic. So I think in the future, focusing more on those opportunities will actually give us a strong, strengthened bioeconomy opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, Catherine, you're from Becker Ill Rehab, and we know that there's some transformation which is happening now, and looking forward to something you're calling biosciences for Africa. So will this be one of those support systems that will solve our infrastructure needs in the continent?
Yes, absolutely. So networks and partnerships, how we formulate them, will be very key in also what we're trying to create, which will not only cover East and Central Africa, but all of Africa. So how do we take our learnings, our experiences from East and Central Africa into all of Africa and still be mindful of the bioeconomy and also biosciences applications and products.
Yeah, okay, so I see a stronger ecosystem emerging.
Yes.
Anne, you're joining us from Vienna, and from where you stand and how you look at the region, and we know that FAO has also been doing some work in the region. How do you see the future 10 years from today? Anne, you're muted. You could unmute, please. Anne, please unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, fantastic.
Excellent. So I was saying, apologies, first of all, that I cannot be with you in East Africa at the moment. I would have loved to be on the panel and see other presenters. But let me give you my perspective here from Vienna, from the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, where we are also embarking on a 10-year strategic program on bioeconomy. So asking how I see Eastern Africa bioeconomy in 10 years, I have to say I'm very confident that you will play a very strong, a very leading role in the region, but also globally. And I say that because in the past 2 days, we have clearly seen how a strong bioeconomy strategy and the entire process behind it has really brought different actors and stakeholders together in the region over the past years, actors from the ministries, from different ministries, food and agriculture, research and innovation, environment, health. I think this is really instrumental, joining forces with scientists and academia, joining forces with the industry and the private sector and civil society. And I think together, working in the regions, but also globally, really gives you great opportunities to position East Africa as a bioeconomy stakeholder.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. And I would like to maybe spice up what you've mentioned by informing our audience, both those joining us virtually and here, that Eastern Africa region is the first economic bloc to have a regional bioeconomy strategy and the second globally. So I hope that this momentum will continue so that the vision that Anne has given us can be realized 10 years from today. But coming to Mons, I know that the SEI, Stockholm Environment Institute, played a very instrumental role in defining the SDGs. And I think you continue to do a lot of studies in this area. You've also been, or you are still actually, a member of the Bioinnovate Africa Program Advisory Committee. So how do you see, what is then your vision 10 years from today?
Yeah, thank you, Julius. And as you said, I also agree with Anne and the other speakers that Eastern Africa has become a front runner here with the first ever regional bioeconomy strategy in the making. And this is not something you see in many places of the world. And the stories we've seen here over the last 2 days, the examples, it really shows leadership. I have to point that out. Because Eastern Africa will never be the world leader in automotive industry or in IT like Silicon Valley, for example. But this is a place where Eastern Africa, based on its resources, can actually be a world leader. And in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, I think what's moving this here is also the recognition that this is really a triple whammy for sustainable development. If we simplify it in terms of the 3 pillars, environmental, social, economic, we see that the bioeconomy development, it is environmentally sustainable because it takes us away from fossil fuel dependency and into valuing biodiversity and ecosystems in a new way. It's socially sustainable because it leads to better livelihoods, jobs, opportunities for young people in the rural communities. and economically sustainable, because it creates new companies, it creates new markets and export opportunities, not just in the region, but actually reaching global markets. And we're only scratching the surface now of the opportunities. We are mostly talking about food, feed, some fiber, things like that. But over time, we can of course see immense opportunities across all sectors of society, and it's materials, medicine, construction materials, power production, substituting cement, steel, plastic, chemicals, as well as the fossil energies, coal, oil and gas. So today we've shown the proof of concept. We know we can do it. We've seen the businesses going to scale. And I think 10 years from now, we will have a new arena of a bioeconomy flourishing here. It's there to grab for us. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, our panel, 10 years from now, God willing, we will call you back to this stage and take you to account on what you have said. But my audience and those joining us virtually, if you have a vision 10 years from now, please feel free to post that on our Q&A and also on the discussion forum. But coming back to the panel here, now that you've given us the vision, and I must say you've been all very, very optimistic, and that is great. What should we do differently to realize this vision? And let me come to you, Fortunate.
Thank you, Julius. From the first day of the conference, I've been noting what participants and panelists would like to see done differently. One, and they will also come through the challenges we are facing in the bioeconomy. So we look at incentivizing the bio products in the ESC partner states. I mean, in terms of taxes, in terms of moving your product from one country to another without any cost, and also supporting the innovators, especially the young innovators, into giving them patents and doing capacity building in terms of entrepreneurship skills for them to design, package, and sell their product. That's the way I look at it, to do something different for sustainable bioeconomy development in the ESA.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a point that came up also in the previous discussion was the need for some kind of SME policy on bioincubation. And I'm glad that one of the panelists mentioned that this was actually in the bioeconomy strategy. So maybe that will be another landmark to provide incentives that you have mentioned. And let's come to you. What do you think we should do differently?
Can you hear me, Julius?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes,
loud and
perfect.
clear.
Good. I'll have to test twice. I think a lot of things you do wonderfully, and you don't need to do them differently. And one is the draft strategy that we've heard about already, which is clearly centering around sustainability and the SDGs. And then the Bioeconomy Observatory, where the EIC is already starting to compile and collect data to show impact of bioeconomy actions. And what I've heard in the past 2 days and read and heard through interactions, I think the region is already doing a lot which contributes to the SDGs through bioinnovations. Today we heard young entrepreneurs talking about alternative proteins, underutilized crops, for instance, microbial proteins, insect protein. Just think about how many SDGs you can address with them if implemented correctly. I'm thinking about better nutrition, obviously, but also climate change, as you can hear left and right these days, are obviously a target that you can address with these specific bioinnovations. Or I'm thinking about microbiome solutions, biological fertilizers or biopesticides, or alternative to plastics, which you're addressing in your bioeconomy strategy. So I think you're on really good track, both from the strategy perspective, but also what we're seeing from the industry and the small startup companies. And I would just say continue as if you started. So no need to do anything differently.
Okay, thank you. And I do have somebody has posted here, Emmanuel. He's saying this is a good question to panelists, and he suggests to do more research, more innovations, more investments, etc., to amplify the bioeconomy. Catherine, from where you stand, in the biosciences research, are there things you feel we should do differently in that area?
Yes, just to add on to what we have learned for the past 2 days, there's been a lot of innovations and a lot of developments and a lot of products and a lot of startup companies have been developed. But how do we move those companies to the next level where they are profitable, where they are really viable? And I'm thinking there's really need for more and more working together, more partnerships, and also realizing the power of what everyone brings onto the table. The other thing that I'd like to mention is harnessing the power of knowledge, indigenous knowledge. Sometimes when we fail to realize the power of biotechnology, the power of the innovations that we bring, because we're not embracing the local knowledge of the communities that we want to transform, and then we lose that transformative power of the science that we have. So if we can actually, as we are move along with the indigenous people, with the communities that we are targeting, so that we can grow and then tap the market more and also grow our businesses.
Yeah, and I think what you say also ties well with what Emmanuel mentioned in the chat, and what we had, especially from South Africa, where they have put a lot of investment in indigenous knowledge. So Mons, earlier the ambassador told us Sweden is one of the distinguishing things is innovation culture. And with innovation, it's about doing things differently. What do you think we could do differently?
Yeah, that's what we have to work on the coming 10 years. And I think I'll have maybe comment on the project level and then a little bit moving beyond projects, because we should continue with the projects, and we need to, as we heard in the previous session on incubation, we need to have a lot more projects that move towards market readiness. So kind of investment grade business concepts that can take on more investment and venture capital, and that can look at larger scales. And I think we need industrial partners to develop those projects and those concepts, because we tend to think a little bit too much small scale, sort of grassroots initiatives, community level. It's extremely important, but you need also to complement with the larger scale things. And then moving, scaling out from the project to market creation, to build demand through procurement, for example, from the public sector, and to build the institutions around stabilizing this system as an innovation system. And that includes policy, of course. And here we come to the regional dimension and the dimension of the EAC, where I think that can be a real engine for developing this through regional cooperation and international cooperation. And I would say there, maybe 3 things I would give priority to. First is standards, so that the products and the businesses can function across the region without having a lot of bureaucracy everywhere. So that, for example, a standard set in one country can also be relevant or usable also in another country. The second is trade, free trade and free movement and passage of materials and goods, which is there on paper, but it doesn't quite work today. I understand there are implementation problems when it comes to the economic integration of the East African community. That is a very important aspect. And the third is, I think, campaigning and awareness raising, that the politicians need to embrace this and popularize and make the consumers and citizens understand what this shift is about and how it can benefit them as consumers as well as the societies as a whole. Because there are so many benefits that go to the individual as well. It's more nutritious and more food secure, etc., the things that we can do if we produce them with the latest bioscience applications into products, for example, based on traditional crops and so on, that we've seen some examples of.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody in the audience here who has a view on what we could do differently? Or do you agree with my panelists? Okay. One thing that was mentioned, and I would like to get your views, dear panel, is that we don't necessarily have to do things like the industrial world did. We can actually have a different pathway, the bioeconomy pathway, in order for us to leapfrog. Do you think this is a kind of mindset shift that we should introduce in the the kind of awareness programs, Mons, that you have mentioned? What do you think, Mons?
I don't know. I was thinking about another angle, which is a leapfrogging thing, because right now globally there's this enormous drive to green finance and green investment. Worldwide, we see the big capital actors moving to find new and better ways of financing green ventures and green projects. And in the European Union, they are slapping heavy regulation on the banks to disclose their portfolios' sustainability. Many of the big investment funds are requiring sort of divestment out of brown sectors into green. And this will create opportunities for those that can deliver. You will get better conditions for the financing, and people are looking for investment opportunities. And I think this is something that will accelerate over the coming years. In Europe, we see it already, but the European investors, they will also need to look outside Europe. And why not attract them here and attract that green bond capital or green loans to the region here? That is a leapfrog that I think is definitely within reach.
Absolutely. And I think you did mention something about free movement of goods, services, and people. And I note that we have the free trade agreement, both within the EAC, the COMESA, and also Africa-wide. I wonder, fortunate from where you stand, you're part of the EAC and part of this Africa discussions. Do you think embracing innovation, and in particular bio-innovation, could be one way that countries can benefit from these free trade arrangements?
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the Common Market Protocol of EAC and the Custom Union, it really gives a lot of facilitation for such ventures of moving both goods and services, even the people, from one place, from one country to another. The challenge we have is the implementation of these protocols and the strategies that EAC has put in place, and politically they are affecting such implementation. But innovations, as you have said, is something we are looking at the East African Science and Technology Commission, because now we are currently in this financial year going to develop innovation, technology transfer, and commercialization strategy that will aid such innovations from one partner state to another. An example is I looked at the Bioinnovate grantees. One is in Kenya, another one is in Uganda, another one is in Burundi. They are developing one product, but to patent it becomes a problem because there are different registration boards in different countries that don't even communicate together. So it becomes a problem for somebody to get a patent from Burundi to Uganda. It has to be registered again, and there are costs to that. So we are looking at the innovation and technology transfer and commercialization in the whole of the EAC to overcome that challenge.
Okay, thank you. And I do have Kebede Abekaz online, who is also very optimistic. He says East Africa is the origin of mankind and diverse food, sovereignty, long daytime in tropical regions to exploit the economical use of bioeconomy and so on. So I think in short, he's telling us we will make it, but we need to wake up. So this is Kebede. Thank you very much joining us from Ethiopia. So let me turn to my panel here again. We've been witnessing, the surge of COVID-19, which took the whole world by surprise. What lessons are we learning from this COVID-19, and how might it affect or influence our efforts in developing a sustainable bioeconomy? Let me start with you, Anne, from Vienna.
Okay. Yes, very good question. I think we can see two main lessons from the COVID pandemic. And one is that we are vulnerable, and our food systems are vulnerable, and so is the bioeconomy. So we really need to build back better and greener. In short, we need to make our economy more sustainable. And as we have heard from a previous speaker, it's a message, I think, that is heard in many parts of the world, and there are investment opportunities linked to it. So this is really a moment to make sure that we learn that lesson. And then number two is that, as we have also seen, that there are specific bioinnovations that can help to provide solutions to these challenges, that can help us build better and greener. Let me just give you one example from the environmental sphere. I think a global challenge, as we see absolutely everywhere, is plastic pollution. It's a big global problem. It was a big problem before the pandemic, and it's even bigger now. It's a heavy burden on the environment, but not only, it's a health problem. We don't just see plastic in the oceans, we see it in the soils, we see it in our food. It's not just coming from packaging materials, it comes from agriculture equipment, it's coating our fertilizers, it's a mulching film on the fields. And I'm saying this, that this is really making us weaker and more vulnerable. And this is one of those examples where bioeconomy can come in and provide solutions. Solutions to plastic, alternative materials, alternative methodologies and techniques to produce these materials. So there is a lot of opportunity out there, and this is just one of many. So I think it's the moment to really grab them and make something out of it.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. I think from what I get from you is COVID-19 is making bioeconomy even more relevant. Fortunate, what's your view?
Thank you, Julius. I think I have only one. I was reading the economic outlook in the EAC. They say innovations tripled. During the COVID-19, there were a lot of innovations from one angle to another, from one sector to another. It is a lesson that I've learned myself, that with COVID-19 pandemic, people did bio-innovated. And this has brought in a lot of products in the market, some of which we didn't even know. It is a positive way, as a lessons learned, and that's what I can give for today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mons?
I give you two things then, supply chains and health. So we've seen the supply chain disruptions in the wake of the COVID, creating today even production stops all over the world, as well as energy problems in many regions of the world. There's been particularly this semiconductor business that has halted production of of cars and trucks in the EU. So the lesson is to secure your supply chains and source more locally in your home region. And we see already investments in that direction for sure. The second is like connected to the bioeconomy as well, that the health sector will just keep becoming more and more important economically. And the applications and products that we can develop from the bioresource base and the biological, the genetic diversity that we have in this region is a comparative advantage that is there to be taken up. And I think it's already being exploited actually in Bioinnovate projects, but this is going to keep coming back. And this is not the end of COVID, and COVID is not the last pandemic either. So this will be part of our future, and the more we can find new cures and new ways of treating using our biodiversity, I think this is going to be a big part of humanity's future.
Absolutely. Catherine?
Yes, to agree with all the speakers, what COVID has actually made us realize has made us to be innovative, and has also exposed other the negative effects of over-reliance on outsourcing or outside countries. So I would say with the current crisis, it is very important to actually develop our own systems so that when a crisis like this happens, at least even if you are innovative, there are already systems in place that can allow you to move around products and to be innovative without having to depend on other countries. That's what I would say. And on the positive side, yes, still talking about innovation and creating new ideas. COVID has allowed us to realize the power of working together also in a very open and fair way, where nobody feels they have to. So you can tell from even the development of the vaccines, we all needed to work together regardless of what you have or what you don't have, because it was a crisis. So I would say with that mindset, we see the power of collaboration, even now in the bioeconomy, to see now, without a crisis, how can we work together, how can we be innovative together and still have strong systems in place that can allow us to overcome any challenges that we face.
Absolutely. And I think I would like to also underscore the point you mentioned about this being a wake-up call, for governments, development partners, everybody to make more investment in research and not just wait for a crisis to happen and start looking for solutions. But I think investing more, and then we have these ideas, maturing with time, could help us overcome easily the next, pandemic. Okay, and Catherine, you did mention something about collaborations and partnerships, and this is very critical for a bioeconomy. But maybe let's get in a little bit deeper. How should we form these partnerships in reality, both at the local level, at the regional level, and maybe globally? And what is necessary to make them work? I start with you, Catherine.
Okay, thank you
brought
for
it
that.
up. You brought it up. So,
I think for partnerships to work, there is need for ownership, co-ownership, and co-creating together. I'll give an example. In Becker, we do have a lot of partners and stakeholders. But whenever a partner feels they are not being valued or their contributions are not being valued, or there's only a time when they are involved in the whole process, they sort of push back. So to have stakeholders value them, even if it's actually the consumers, to have them at the very beginning of the process. And then for things now to work, we realize that you realize what each and every partner is bringing. For example, industry. We know industry, they have the resources, they have the expertise, and they are also product focused. So it is good to always involve them if we want to be efficient, if we want to be effective, when we are still putting together something. So in order to have a strong and viable bioeconomy, I think there is need to have all players right at the beginning of the formulation of anything. So we have industry, and we also have government, we have academia, and then we have even the market, the consumers, everybody involved at the beginning. There was a saying yesterday that politics is more powerful than science. I think we can actually demystify that if we work together. We can find that there are some times when science is more powerful than politics. But even if for you, in order for you to have your products or whatever science or innovation you come up with, you still need an environment that allows it to go through. You still need favorable policies. You still need favorable regulations for anything to come through. So yes, we just need to work together, politics and science and industry.
Absolutely. Anne, from where you stand, how should we form these partnerships so that they are mutually beneficial?
I can actually just second the previous speaker. We've heard a lot about partnerships in the last 2 days, and I would even boldly state bioeconomy is not possible without partnerships. It includes partnerships at local level, national level, regional or global level. Today I heard about the Bioinnovate Gender Fellowship Program, where you bring young women together across a region, which I think is a great partnership opportunity from the science perspective. But then we've also heard examples, for example, how to bring the industry and the public sector together in so-called public-private partnerships. In South Africa, we see good examples of this. Also in the European Commission, the Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking, it's called, where small and medium enterprises, but also large companies partner with the European Commission to invest in new innovations and scale them up. So I think we need partnerships at all levels, and I could give many examples here. But it's definitely something to invest in and to promote, because, as I said before, bioeconomy without partnerships would not be a bioeconomy.
Thank you, Anne. Fortunate.
Productive partnership and coordination is important, and actually, it's if you are not benefiting from a partnership, and if you are not owning the partnership, it becomes very hard and difficult for it to survive. One form is forming R&D, research and development think tanks, that link, as Anne said, linking the academia, research and private sector. In that way, you have productive partnerships and coordination within both at the national level and regional level. And again, it comes also on the what do you get out of the partnership? If it's not beneficial to you, people just sign MOUs, but they are never implemented, because at the end of the day, they say what I wanted to get out of this partnership is not there. So one of the things is to do R&D partnership for academia, research, and private sector. And again, if you see at these young innovators, linking them to industry, attaching them to factories, attaching them to productive sectors, really brings in their partnership, both at the local level, and the funding is another incentive that brings also, that cements partnership in bioeconomy.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know the panel can be a little bit boring if everybody agrees all the time?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, like, I developed this allergy against partnerships when I was working with the SDGs and one of those high-level political forum on the 2030 agenda. I think I heard partnership a gazillion times. So it's easy to slap on, and it sounds good, but what does it mean in practice? And what you said, Fortunate, there at the end is what I mean. this is like what you need. You need to bring the scientific, let's say, the ideas need to meet the business, and the business need to meet the investors. And that's the troika that we need to facilitate. And when I look at the successful rise of the digital economy, they have these forums that are worldwide known, from San Francisco to Basel, like a fair, like forums for where ideas meet entrepreneurs, meet investors. That's the kind of forum I think we need to create and find funding for as part of joining these links.
Yeah.
Then this is partnership, but it's sort of something operational and something that leads forward.
Yeah, and I think, just to demonstrate the reality of it is, all of us seated here were partners to this conference. So we can see by our logos here. And of course, Anne
here though, no.
Absolutely, but of course, Anne, from where you stand, we do know that we are also partnering with FAO in a number of areas. But I just want maybe a thumbs up if we are going to continue this partnership, at least to demonstrate that it works.
Yeah.
Becker Hill Rehab, ESTECO, ESC, SEI, FAO, that we'll be thinking about. A thumbs up if you agree. Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. So come back to you and to ask. I think let's spend maybe 1 minute each. What you see as the critical opportunity that we should seize going forward. Maybe let me start with you, Maurice.
No time to think.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, critical opportunity is the platform we have with the bioeconomy strategy, with political buy-in. Then we can talk about implementation of this strategy in the countries and together in the region.
Okay.
This is a sort of an opportunity that can facilitate a lot of other activities. So that's an opportunity we shouldn't miss.
Okay, and our rapporteurs should take this very seriously. And Catherine?
Yeah, I see a big opportunity in bioincubation of startups so that they can move to the next level. And also there's a big opportunity in transforming communities with that, as you have people who are looking for jobs, actually creating jobs. So to me, bioincubation is a big opportunity in the bioeconomy.
Okay. And earlier on, Eva said, Bioinnovate Africa is a kind of incubation mechanism.
Right.
So maybe this is an early fruit that we can all take advantage of. Fortunate?
In Eastern Africa, we have vast bioresources. That's the opportunity we have, the first one. And taking that in mind, then you have the products. You don't labor a lot to, these are free bioresources in terms of waste, in terms of insects for feed, in terms of bioenergy. All these are bioresources that are available in Eastern Africa. The second one is the available market for our bioproducts. If you look at East Africa, where we are almost 77 million, already this is already a market for our bioproducts. And also looking at the youth innovation, which is creating jobs for and revenue for our young innovators. It is also an opportunity for us to explore. And finally, although it doesn't like partnerships, these partnerships are there to help us, and we should take advantage of such partnerships because we learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And you did give me a thumbs up, so we'll take on that. Anne?
Yes, another big opportunity which we haven't been talking about in this session, but heard a lot about in the previous ones, I think there are a lot of finance opportunities, private and public. Bioeconomy is a topic, as we've heard, that is very right for the moment. And we see many big public global initiatives, for instance, the Green Climate Fund, but also the Global Environment Facility, that could potentially fund big programs on bioeconomy for the region, all the more that there is already a strategy out there and that countries are going to start to roll out their action plans. So I think it's really an opportunity that you should tap into. Also think about private foundations and private investors, as we've heard before. So I think the moment is really ripe and it's worth to harvest. So that's my 5 cents to close.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think as we come to the close of this discussion, I would like each of you to spend 30 seconds to give me your parting shots. Let me begin with you, Anne.
So, apart from what I've already said, I would think roll out these bioeconomy strategies and action plans and get them funded.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Fortunate?
Let's embrace bioeconomy, growth in the region, and by also making use of the regional abundant natural resources in creating jobs, generating income, wealth, and finally connecting smallholder farmers to new bio-based value chains.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anne? Catherine.
Developing a viable bioeconomy is a learning process. It takes time and it requires a lot of holistic working together approaches. So my parting words are let's work together and realize each other's strength and strengthen our economies in different places in East Africa.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mons?
Yeah, the mandate of my institute, SCI, is to connect environment and development and provide the knowledge base that we need to develop sustainably. And as I said in the beginning, the bioeconomy is the triple whammy to achieve this. And we are in this for the long run. We also have the center here in Nairobi, which will be here for the long term. So you can count on us for the continuation.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did have also some people joining us virtually. Musa says, thank you. This has been a highly interactive session or conference and detailed. So thank you, panelists. We have John from Tanzania, I think, saying with national strategies in the pipeline, should we expect to see bigger horizontal growth of Bioinnovate Africa into country-specific, say Bioinnovate Tanzania, Bioinnovate Egypt, Bioinnovate Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. So thank you very much. And colleagues, please join me in thanking our panel with a big round of applause. And as I invite Dr. Kevin Desai, let me also take this opportunity to thank my colleagues, wonderful team at Bioinnovate Africa and ICIPE. Thank you so much for making this happen. And our partners for this conference, thank you so much for making all this happen. Really appreciate. So Dr. Desai, please welcome to give us your closing statement. Let's welcome him the Kenyan way, with a big round of applause. Maybe we should get the Kenyan way. Who could show us the Kenyan way? Dora, show us the Kenyan way. Please. Please. Okay, welcome, Dr. Desai.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it's been very inspiring being with you here today, and in particular, 2 sessions that have brought out so much inspiration by way of the enormous promise of bioeconomy and in providing solutions to some of the most pertinent issues within the East African community. For instance, the solution towards food security, or the phenomenal potential it has towards gaining access to export opportunity throughout the world, in view of the fact that indeed one of the greatest resources we have is based on the bioeconomy. And then, of course, the aspects with respect to our overall ambition and what the East African community espouses, the promotion of inclusive development, promoting that high level of yield, productivity, and innovation for farmers to collectively work together to see their entire value chain be processed from an end-to-end ecosystem. And that aspect of therein the potential it has by way of equity, promoting access and opportunity for all in the most efficient and favorable capacities within this context. There's also that wish that the EAC espouses too by way of the East African community promoting greater resilience in its economies and more predictability, and averse to issues with respect to unpredictable environments and so on. And there too, the promise of bioeconomy is great and has the phenomenal potential as been highlighted. But it's also that ambition to promote greater self-reliance by way of our industrialization, our sixth development strategy, our EAC development strategy, and how people-centeredness depends on, indeed, prosperity. On an equal basis, it has that profound impact by way of ensuring that it creates the proportional regulation between social development, economic development, and environmental conservation. And having learnt all this today and having listened to the statistics behind it, then indeed it's obvious that such initiatives and such opportunities have to be highly prioritized in the overall development and implementation capacities. Ladies and gentlemen, with this in mind, then, what it really does call for, as the second Bioeconomy Conference is concerned, is the ability to realize how serious this value proposition is to the overall development of the region and the potential it has in our role in global affairs and development. And with that in mind, then indeed what needs to happen, of course, is such forums and such initiatives have to yield decisions. And earlier on, we heard about the importance of partnerships and co-creation. What's clear is that indeed there are a lot of institutions in existence today and associations. Within the context of national institutions, you have associations which link the private sector to government. In the case of Kenya, we have the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. In the case of the region, we have federations like the East African Federation on Agriculture, or the East African Federation on Manufacturing, or the newly established East African Federation on Transportation. But what clearly needs to happen, and indeed these institutions and frameworks exist for that reason, in order for private sector to dialogue, to advocate, and to co-create progressive policies, legislations, and regulations that facilitate the business environment. They may be skewed towards being, in a certain sense, not inclusive to the enormous promise that new innovations and new capacities could yield. And it's for that simple reason that the missing partner, in my opinion, is, of course, the scientist and the researcher. And I need us to reflect on that, indeed, how we're able to create the necessary frameworks and structures to be inclusive to researchers,
and scientists, and most importantly, how compelling data could then yield to bigger long-term investment and profit realization. And that can only happen if we find ways in which we create structures and mechanisms that go simply beyond partnerships and dialogue, that go into that phase of co-creation and the ability to look at the entire ecosystem from a systemic perspective of the issues that have been brought up by way of looking at aspects of the harmonization of standards, the harmonization of policies, legislations, the regulatory environment, but at the same time compel stakeholders to complement infrastructure development by way of technology parks and other kinds of key instruments, but also that aspect of the ability to bring about the necessary capacity and innovation to transition into value chains. And what that then calls for, ladies and gentlemen, is indeed that what we're looking at is a paradigm shift in the way we create these co-created environments where we're able to not only make decisions, but decisions based on a certain intense coordination, but also the choreography, the ability to identify what steps to take in which order in order to gain success as efficiently as possible, but also as resourceful as possible. And then, of course, the ability to promote that necessary communication to bring the entire value chain together. Indeed, from the progress that I've described by way of public-private partnership, I presume that that gives you confidence that indeed these partnerships are established in governments and at the East African community by way of the East African Business Council, but need to be developed to cater for newer ventures, newer and transformative opportunities like the bioeconomy, and in particular that important role that really has to be a resolve of this conference, that how do we get scientists and researchers at the forefront of driving transformation, because that indeed is their frontier, at the very forefront. Ladies and gentlemen, to give you further confidence, there have been various protocols and acts that have been discussed in this conference pertaining to the East African community. You might have heard them with respect to, of course, the ongoing work on the bioeconomy strategy, the protocols on phytosanitary standards, the entire development of the common market, the customs union, our efforts in standardization, metrology, quality systems, the pact that we are developing and based on the East African community and the possible link to the European Union on an EPA arrangement, thereby solidifying exactly what needs to happen by way of leveraging science, technology, and innovation, but complementary trade systems and the overall ability to integrate and build capacities beyond African borders. There's also complementary structures that are inclusive and support such an idea by way of our engagement in telecommunications and ICTs by way of a one network system, the ability to have ICT networks harmonized and their standards by way of ensuring that we're able to provide efficient and accessible communications throughout the East African community, and what's currently being built onto these networks, which include an e-commerce strategy, thereby facilitating business online. And all of this helps build that ecosystem, in addition to protocols on environments and natural ecosystems, as well as transboundary ecosystems, and a qualification system which enables qualified people to be, and their qualifications to be recognized within the EAC. All of these key developments over time, and since the inception of the EAC, have endeavored to create an ecosystem. To date, the proof of this is that we trade between partner states on a 15% basis. We have 15% intra-trade. Now, you'd all agree with me that this is far too low in consideration of the fact that first world structures, by way of, if you compare the European Union, trades at 60%. And so within the scope of the bioeconomy, the chances of increasing intra-trade exists too, tremendously, by ensuring that we're able to build onto ecosystems and therefore create highly resilient intra-trade systems, but also complement extra trade systems too. And so it's with this in mind that the confidence that I'm hoping that you gain from this is that indeed this environment exists, the demand exists by way of the number of partner states, and that will and political will to look at solutions and find solutions for the East African community. And we all have a role to play in this. As I close, ladies and gentlemen, once again I emphasize that indeed we need to increasingly take such initiatives very seriously and ensure that we create frameworks and structures that promote the necessary decisions going forward, that the SME incubation and EAC policy is extremely relevant at this time, and the bioeconomy, by way of its overall potential, being a key structure towards agricultural development, but at the same time empowering one of the most latent industries within our community, can be that facilitator of an SME policy dedicated to incubation and that transformation. And I think it's all within this room that the potential lies, but definitely the frameworks are open and can embrace this new frontier quite efficiently. There's also that approach where we need to seriously take towards ensuring that we define the markets. And as a society, the ability for us to bring about a collective engagement by all stakeholders, and as one of the panelists said, to sort of journey together so that we're able to be inclusive and solve problems as they arise. And that very important ability to look at all of this from an end-to-end ecosystem, and in particular, create that capacity and structure in order to build onto this. I think that, ladies and gentlemen, with that, there would be a lot more potential to see to it that we keep making progress, as you've done on this second Bioeconomy conference, but going into the future and hopefully into the next year, we would see a new horizon by way of the amplification of what your solidarity and your networking today espouses, and the ability to lift that very important field into the future. I thank you very much, and I would like to close this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.